दादा एक मिनिटासाठी फ्रेम खराब केली ना. अरे बंद कर बंद दुमानोला खाली आप.
This is a country that worships cricket. So, and I mean, nobody would know better than you that cricketers share deity status. Okay? If there's one thing outside of food and politics and Bollywood that Indians take seriously, it's cricket. Talk to us about your grassroots cricket journey. What did you do?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here, MCC and Barclays. My cricket journey, I think it started at home in terms of first the parents allowing me to play. Typical South Indian family education is important, and thankfully I didn't give them an opportunity to strike me down. I was pretty decent in my class, so that allowed me to play the sport. And it was like any other start, playing with a rubber ball, tennis ball on the streets of Bangalore. You can't do that anymore, the kind of traffic that we have. But generally, that's how you start. And any family event, all the cousins would gang up, have a bat and ball, and then you start playing cricket. And that's how I started my journey. And then club cricket, then school cricket. So the support that you had from every section of the society, whether it's your family, whether it's your cousins and friends, whether it was the school or the club. And the structure in cricket in India has been really strong. The foundation has been really strong, both from the state association and also the BCCI. So all age groups. So I started off playing with the under 15. So the structure at school cricket, so you do well in school cricket. School has a cricket team, then you sort of go to the next level, and then you go on to the next level. So it was very structured in that sense, and I was lucky that I was noticed and I performed at the right moment, because it's not just about performing in every match, but the important ones also you need to perform. And I was lucky that I had that opportunity. And even when I went into my engineering, the support that I received from my college, because at the end of it, when you're studying and also playing sport, you need the support of your institution to giving you the opportunity to go out and play, because I hardly went to class, and the attendance was a main important aspect for you to write an exam. So even for me to write the exam, I didn't have any number of days that I attended at class. So the college had to make that allowance. And I feel for anyone to succeed, you need the community to help you. You need everyone to be a part of the journey and support the player. And we didn't have academies then, now you have. It's a lot more structured, a lot more competitive. So it's a lot more challenging now. But having said that, in terms of the support that I received right throughout my journey was consistent. And that's what you notice in cricket. And that's why it's so popular. It's everyone has played the sport or has been involved in some way or the other, and that to me is the biggest sort of plus that the particular sport has. And I was lucky that I got noticed at the right moment, and then I happened to perform. So that generally is probably most young cricketers' journey. Some get fast tracked, some get noticed very early, and some will have to just wait. But like I mentioned, whenever you have that opportunity, the right moment, you perform, then you're there. So that was my journey.
Anil, let's talk about the cricketers of today. Do you see them becoming influential role models, kind of which you and your peers were?
Oh, massive. I mean, you can see the influence of cricketers thanks to social media. I think in terms of the way the cricketers are followed, youngsters sort of get inspired by the Virat Kohlis, the MS Dhonis, and the Rohit Sharmas, and then you see the next generation of cricketers who come through. Whether it was a Vaibhav Suryavanshi or a Yashasvi Jaiswal or a Shubman Gill. I think all these cricketers have a strong influence on the younger generation. And today, when you look at not just the men, you also look at the women's cricket, how they have been able to influence the sport, whether it is Harmanpreet Kaur or Smriti Mandana, Mithali Raj, all of them. The World Cup has made a massive difference to the girls' cricket. BCCI again, certainly needs the credit in terms of how they've been able to promote women's cricket in India. So I'll just give you an example. The KSCA currently, the Karnataka State Cricket Association, is conducting a summer camp for various age groups in men and women to look at talent across Karnataka in smaller districts, in districts outside of Bangalore. The response to not just the boys, 15 or 14, 16, 19, but the girls is the same. The response is the same. Every parent wants their child to go and play cricket. And it's wonderful to see that. It's wonderful to see the influence of these names that I just mentioned. And those are just few names. But every time someone watches a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old who's bashing every bowler in the IPL, every parent wants their child to take up the sport and be a part of that. And the stories of some names which were not known. I mean, yesterday was a classic example of a Mukul Chaudhary who just won the game 2 days before that. Not many knew who he was, and then suddenly he is in the limelight. So I think these kind of stories that are coming out in cricket will certainly have a large bearing and an immense influence on how people look at cricket itself and how they would like to be involved. And thanks to sponsorships, thanks to the media, we're all promoting the sport, because it can't just be one stakeholder trying to get everything going. It has to be like what you said, the community of every stakeholder needs to come together. And fortunately for cricket, we have all of that in place. And that's one of the reasons why the influence of cricketers, not just on the sport itself, on young cricketers taking up the sport, but I've seen the influence of cricket going beyond just that community of cricket or sport. And I've been a part of that, whether it is wildlife conservation or whatever it is. I think the messaging that comes out from cricket, it becomes that much more a responsible message coming from a cricketer. And that's the kind of influence I think we've seen, the influence of sport in India, and especially these young cricketers who have a major influence on the Gen Z. And thanks to the kind of media attention, and the social media has certainly made it a lot more engaging, because they have a sort of a conversation, good or bad, but still, you're having a conversation directly with that particular person.
Anil, what are the life lessons you've taken away from cricket that you feel have really spurred you on, if you will, off field?
Oh, many. I think cricket is like life itself. I mean, there's absolutely no difference between a game of cricket versus what you sort of encounter day in, day out in your daily life. Just the failure. I mean, how do you sort of manage that? At the end of the day, there's a scorecard. Every game, there's a result. So you have to, whether you win or lose, you have to start again the next day. So your past performance is just past. And just managing that, I think, is a major, sort of life skill. It happens naturally. You're not thinking. You're not thinking about the failure. You're not thinking about the result. You're just going through the process. At practice, you're just going through the, how you can improve as a bowler, as a batter, and then you're concentrating on your fielding. You're sort of ensuring that all your creating skills are in place, and then you go and trust yourself, and you have that belief saying, okay, I can go and do the job. And then when you have 100,000 people, it could be 100,000 people, it could be no one there. But still, it's important that you're going there and then doing it. So that's a major sort of skill of managing pressure, managing the expectations of what one can do. Because it's not just your own expectations. You do it once, and then our friends here will want us to do it more every day. So then it becomes that much pressure. The media suddenly has a headline, and then 2 days later you don't perform. Then again, there's how do you sort of manage that? So that's a great lesson. The other is it's a team sport. Yes, you may sometimes want the ball every time, but you don't get it. You just have to wait for your turn. The skipper, the captain, you just go with what he does. You may agree, you may disagree, but then you sort of blend and then say, okay, that's team sport. And the best part about cricket is agreement and disagreement happen even before the start of the game, at the toss itself. Some of the players will say, no, you know what, we should bat first. The captain says, no, we're going to field first. And then you just have to go with it. And then it's just 11 players. So the 12, 13, 14, 15 will miss out. They may not agree with the captain's list of players. So you just have to go with that. And that's something that you don't teach it in any other school. So you just learn, and that's the beauty of sport. And the other aspect is, again, you may not even get an opportunity, right, in a game, because it depends on your position. So all these are great learning lessons, and when you're prepared, you're there, you're ready for the game, and the weather intervenes. So that's the beauty about cricket. And you say, okay, God, I'm in the best of my form, I didn't get an opportunity, and then you miss out. So these are things that you don't really learn anywhere. You just go and day in, day out, play the sport, you learn all of that. And then again, it's just blending with the rest of the players. They are from different backgrounds, speak different languages. Culture is different. Now if you look at the IPL, you're mixing with players who you played against, and suddenly they're your teammates. So these kind of engagements you never get and learn. So and you're not even thinking, you're learning on the go, and then suddenly you then realize that look, all of these are wonderful lessons that you learn, and the perseverance that you sort of pick up and you build over a period of time certainly helps you in the long run.
Thank you, Anil. Each of you, give me what's your vision for what true sport-led community impact would mean for India.
Just on that, I run a company called Tenvic. We are in grassroots sports, and it's not just about cricket, but every other sport. Again, trying to bring structure to sport. What we find is, of course, the access, and the other is engagement. We need to create a larger base for every sport. The reason that cricket is popular, the reason that we are producing so much talent day in, day out in cricket is because a lot of engagement happens, not just with the players participating, but also increasing the participation. And that's something that I think is extremely important at the grassroots. And once you create a larger base and then bring in competition, then automatically the talent pool and the importance of being at the highest level, the competition at the highest level certainly increases. And that's something that we are trying hard. And the talent that is there in the hinterland is outstanding. The hand-eye coordination, because every sport requires that. That's the basic necessity for playing any sport. And the hand-eye coordination that you see in the hinterland is outstanding. And that's what we have found. We found whether it is remote villages in Chhattisgarh, or whether it is in Andhra, whether it is in Gujarat, you go to the smaller towns and villages, whether it's Karnataka, wherever. I think the challenge is how do you keep them engaged? That is the biggest challenge. And the next one is, of course, how do you get coaches to translate that interest into making it a relevant a structure for them to move up, because that's lacking as well, and that's something that we don't think of. When you're looking at the larger group of players or wanting to be a part of the community, somebody needs to be there to teach. For example, in cricket, I know my journalist friends who've seen me from a very young age, some of them are here, but I grew up where actually one of the journalists was a coach. Mr. Rajan Bala, a lot of you connect with. He conducted a coaching camp And that's something that happened. Good or bad, fine, but I think there was an effort. There was an effort coming in saying, look, I'm going to teach you cricket. And that is something that needs to happen, I feel, in sport. And the best part is it's happening. The engagement is growing, the awareness is growing, and hopefully with 2036, the likelihood of having the Olympics in India, certainly that movement will come through, and the Commonwealth is happening. So I'm really positive about sport in India really growing, and hopefully one day, Rishi, you will have a footballer play in the European League, and one day I'm sure football in India will also be a part of the World Cup, because that's something that all of us dream of, but I'm sure one day it will happen.
Yeah, my question is to Hari. So cricket, you talked about the structure of Indian cricket. You are growing the school, college, for the community development. When we were growing up, it's the two important segments for the school boys and also the universities. I think there's a lacuna there. How do you revive that? Because if I'm correct, Gavaskar's team with the last goal in the universities to Sri Lanka, so Gilberta was the captain. London school boys and Indian school boys, a very common thing those days. You think, what happened to that community now?
Rishi,
Great impact and an opportunity.
that's the biggest challenge. If a 15-year-old is smashing every bowler in the world, it's very difficult to get him to a university saying, come on, you need to go there and study before we put together a team. So I think that's the biggest challenge.
It's not appeared for the exams.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge. I didn't play for the university, but I was a part of it. Unfortunately, I got injured before I represented the Bangalore University. I know the university, sort of inter-university was a major tournament. Renton Barrier was a major tournament, but then I don't see that really coming back. But yeah, I think you can revive, not necessarily as a university, but if you look at the way the A teams are playing,
I think that is bigger this way. The age group has taken its place.
the age group has taken its place. The under 19 is a major sort of stepping stone for all countries. I mean, whether it's England, whether it's Australia, whether it's India, South Africa, we've seen players coming through the ranks. That's one. The second one is the A tours, where you have a mix of slightly senior and younger players too. So probably that's the only approach that I can see, but I don't see us going back to the inter-university and inter-schools, unlikely.
So you have
My question to Anil Bhai. Anil Bhai, during the panel discussion, you spoke about your cricket journey, and you said that there are some players who are fast tracked, who get fast tracked, and there are players who rise through the ranks. But from a selector's point of view, from any player's perspective, is it a critical phase? I mean, for example, someone like Vaibhav Suryavanshi, who is so young, whether to fast track him or whether to give him more time, from a selector's point of view, or the team management, captain, coach's point of view, who are the decision makers? Is this a tricky call?
I think the player himself probably answers that question. So there'll be a time where it's very difficult to let go of the player. That's probably was the case with the great Sachin Tendulkar when he came into the scene, where every time he walked out as a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old, he was scoring hundreds. And I'm sure what we have seen of Vaibhav, he's certainly doing all the right things, and at this point in time I think it's a bit of a pressure on a young lad to say, look, I want you to play for India in 2 months' time. It may happen, may not happen, but I think he has wonderful time. I mean, even 10 years later he'll still be 25, and that's the best part about someone who's doing so well as a 15-year-old. And yeah, I'm sure there'll be a time where he will possibly play for India sooner than later. So fast track, or I think every player has his own journey, and that's the best part about being in sport. Some of them start at 15, some of them start at 28, but they still have a role to play in sport. And for Vaibhav, it could be sometime this year, it could be next year, or maybe a couple of years later. But I'm sure the way he's batting, yes, he'll be someone who I'm sure the selectors will be watching closely.
Sir and Anil sir, as you guys mentioned, Olympics 2036 could potentially be in India. So what kind of an impact do you think that could be to potentially kickstart revolution kind of a thing, not just in cricket but also mainly in football, because it could be potentially a changing moment in Indian sports, not just cricket as I said, in football as well. So how much impact do you think that could have for the future generation?
It's a massive thing. I mean, I feel, as growing up, for me, 1982 Asian Games it's still in my memory in terms of watching that and just although it was on television, I was not present at the venue, but now it's a lot more engaging. People, although you're far away from the action, you're still involved, you're still, you're there. And not just that, the grassroots development of every sport suddenly changes. People get to notice at the end of it, the reason that certain sports are popular in India is because you have a national icon, you have an international icon in those sports. Until and unless we create those icons in every sport, it's very difficult for the younger generation to look up to, because you have a next door guy playing cricket. I mean, for example, I gave the example of Mukul yesterday, right? From that area, everybody would be thinking, oh, you know what, I can also be him. But if you don't have that in other sports, it's very difficult to sort of then identify what will take you there. And that, to me, will change if something like that happens in India. Cricket being a part of the Olympics now will certainly help the engagement of cricket in Olympics, but it will also give a massive fillip to other sports, because then not only you're participating, you're also looking forward to certain national heroes going there and then winning medals for the country. And I think that will be the biggest change, and I'm hoping that it will come around and happen. So yeah, let's hope for the best.
We're talking about grassroots sports. You mentioned about the street cricket in Bangalore. In Mumbai we have Maidans. But when you look at the infrastructure development when it comes to sport, it is two ways. On one hand, we are looking at this futuristic stadiums which have the capacity of lakhs of people. On the other hand, a lot of people, especially these veteran sports journalists, would agree, many people, many children are struggling with the traditional means of sports, be it the Maidans of Mumbai or the traditional stadiums of football. How important is it for us, according to you, someone who's been in the middle of this infrastructure or this development of the sport, to make sure that we keep this development balanced moving forward and not just for capacity?
I think Rob just mentioned it as well. Access. Access is the main important aspect to sport. One is access. The next one is what Rishi mentioned. I also mentioned in terms of the right coaching infrastructure. When we talk about infrastructure in sport, people only look at buildings, stadiums, right? That's not just enough. It's also important that people have access to that, and people have access to coaching infrastructure, because that's the main ingredient in terms of kids developing in that particular sport. So that's the hallmark. I mean, ideally, that's one of the reasons why we sort of have that engagement as part of 10 week as well in schools, because we believe that it should be the child who picks the sport, not the parent. Generally in any family, it's the father or the mother telling the child that, okay, you go play cricket, you play badminton, you play tennis. It should be the kid who sort of picks up. I mean, we picked up cricket because we played other sports too. We played plenty of other sports. So that's something that needs to happen. It's not just about one sport. Play 3 different sports and then you pick which one you want to play in. So that should be the engagement. I think more opportunities for youngsters to play the sport. First of all, in cities, the biggest challenge is getting outdoors. That's the biggest challenge. Even when you go outdoors, the time it takes to reach to a particular place. I mean, parents come to me and say, which is the best camp that I can send my kid to? I say, where do you live? So they say, no, I live here. I said, which is the closest one? just go there. Because after a week, the child will have no interest to sit in a traffic for 1.5 hours in a city. The first week, yes, because the parents push, they'll go, but then after a week, they'll say, look, I'm not interested. They lose interest. So the reason that we all played the sport was because you could play on the street, not anymore in big cities. So you need to try and see where things are closer to home. And that's something that I'm sure, if that community develops, that's where engagements with the federations, the sponsors, all of that is extremely critical, because at the end of it, if you want to bring in a proper structure to sport, then you need all community, all stakeholders to come together. And that I'm hoping that it's happening slowly, but certainly it needs to happen a lot more at a lot faster pace because of the number of people that that we have in our country.
Thank you. And but on a serious note, thank you to the MCC, the Premier League, and to yourself for making the time for us to demonstrate the value of our partnerships and what it means for us in Barclays and what Barclays can bring to the table for you guys.
Yeah, well, it's early days. A day and a half. 2 days. A day and a half. Joined the one. Being in air conditioned surroundings most of the time. The last couple of days have been beautiful.
I know that you want to us ladies, we like a good angle. Don't want this, don't want this. And I'm like, bring it down. And then he goes like this, he goes. Yeah.
So I was trying to get down and I didn't anything trying to get here. I can't do it. Doesn't make the best thing. But I said